and they give in to the plan proposed, as I should have taken good care they did, whether they liked it or not." "It is another most extraordinary thing," remarked the Minor Canon in the same tone as before, "that these philanthropists are so given to seizing their fellow creatures by the scruff of the neck, and, as one may say, bumping them into the paths of peace. I beg your pardon, Ma dear, for interrupting. Therefore, dear madam, you will please prepare your son, the Reverend Mr. Septimus, to expect Neville as an inmate to be read with, on Monday next. On the same day, Helena will accompany him to Cloisterham, to take up her quarters at the Nuns' House, the establishment recommended by yourself and son jointly. Please likewise to prepare for her reception and tuition there. The terms in both cases are understood to be exactly as stated to me in writing by yourself when I opened a correspondence with you on this subject, after the honour of being introduced to you at your sister's house in town here. With compliments to the Reverend Mr. Septimus, I am, dear madam, your affectionate brother in philanthropy, Luke Honeythunder." "Well, Ma," said Septimus, after a little more rubbing of his ear, "we must try it. There can be no doubt that we have room for an inmate, and that I have time to bestow upon him, and inclination too. I must confess to feeling rather glad that he is not Mr. Honeythunder himself, though that seems wretchedly prejudiced, does it not? For I never saw him. Is he a large man, Ma?" "I should call him a large man, my dear," the old lady replied, after some hesitation, "but that his voice is so much larger." "Than himself?" "Than anybody." "Ha!" said Septimus, after finishing his breakfast, as if the flavour of the superior family souchong, and also of the ham and toast and eggs, were a little on the wane. Mrs. Crisparkle's sister, another piece of Dresden china, and matching her so neatly that they would have made a delightful pair of ornaments for the two ends of any capacious old fashioned chimney piece, and by right should never have been seen apart, was the childless wife of a clergyman holding corporate preferment in London City. Mr. Honeythunder, in his public character of Professor of Philanthropy, had come to know Mrs. Crisparkle during the last rematching of the china ornaments, in other words, during her last annual visit to her sister, after a public occasion of a philanthropic nature, when certain devoted orphans of tender years had been glutted with plum buns and plum bumptiousness. These were all the antecedents known in Minor Canon Corner of the coming pupils. "I am sure you will agree with me, Ma," said Mr. Crisparkle, after thinking the matter over, "that the first thing to be done is to put these young people as much at their ease as possible. There is nothing disinterested in the notion, because we cannot be at our ease with them unless they are at their ease with us. Now, Jasper's nephew is down here at present, and like takes to like, and youth takes to youth. He is a cordial young fellow, and we will have him to meet the brother and sister at dinner. That's 3. We can't think of asking him without asking Jasper. That's 4. Add Miss Twinkleton and the fairy bride that is to be, and that's 6. Add our 2 selves, and that's 8. Would 8 at a friendly dinner at all put you out, Ma?" "9 would, Sept," returned the old lady, visibly nervous. "My dear Ma, I particularise 8. The exact size of the table and the room, my dear." So it was settled that way; and when Mr. Crisparkle called with his mother upon Miss Twinkleton, to arrange for the reception of Miss Helena Landless at the Nuns' House. The two other invitations having reference to that establishment were proffered and accepted. Miss Twinkleton did, indeed, glance at the globes, as regretting that they were not formed to be taken out into society, but became reconciled to leaving them behind. Instructions were then dispatched to the Philanthropist for the departure and arrival, in good time for dinner, of Mr. Neville and Miss Helena, and the stock for soup became fragrant in the air of Minor Canon Corner. In those days there was no railway to Cloisterham, and Mr. Sapsea said, "There never would be." Mr. Sapsea said more. He said, "There never should be." And yet, marvellous to consider, it has come to pass in these days that express trains don't think Cloisterham worth stopping at, but yell and whirl through it on their larger errands, casting the dust off their wheels as a testimony against its insignificance. Some remote fragment of main line to somewhere else there was, which was going to ruin the money market if it failed, and Church and State if it succeeded, and, of course, the Constitution, whether or no. But even that had already so unsettled Cloisterham traffic, that the traffic, deserting the high road, came sneaking in from an unprecedented part of the country by a back stable way, for many years labelled at the corner, "Beware of the dog." To this ignominious avenue of approach Mr. Crisparkle repaired, awaiting the arrival of a short squat omnibus with a disproportionate heap of luggage on the roof, like a little elephant with infinitely too much castle, which was then the daily service between Cloisterham and external mankind. As this vehicle lumbered up, Mr. Crisparkle could hardly see anything else of it for a large outside passenger seated on the box, with his elbows squared and his hands on his knees, compressing the driver into a most uncomfortably small compass, and glowering about him with a strongly marked face.
"Is this Cloisterham?"
demanded the passenger in a tremendous voice.
"It is,"
replied the driver, rubbing himself as if he ached after throwing the reins to the ostler,
"and I never was so glad to see it."
"Tell your master to make his box seat wider, then. Your master is morally bound, and ought to be legally bound, under tremendous penalties, to provide for the comfort of his fellow man."
The driver instituted, with the palms of his hands, a superficial perquisition into the state of his skeleton, which seemed to make him anxious.
"Have I sat upon you?"
asked the passenger.
"You have,"
said the driver, as if he didn't like it at all.
"Take that card, my friend."
"I think I won't deprive you on it," returned the driver, casting his eyes over it with no great favour, without taking it. "What's the good of it to me?"
"Be a member of that society,"
said the passenger.
"What shall I get by it?"
asked the driver.
"Brotherhood,"
returned the passenger in a ferocious voice.
"Thankee,"
said the driver, very deliberately, as he got down.
"My mother was contented with myself, and so am I. I don't want no brothers."
"But you must have them,"
replied the passenger, also descending,
"whether you like it or not. I am your brother."
"I say,"
expostulated the driver, becoming more chafed in temper,
"Not too far. The worm will, when—"
But here Mr. Crisparkle interposed, remonstrating aside in a friendly voice. "Joe, Joe, Joe! Don't forget yourself, Joe, my good fellow!" And then, when Joe peaceably touched his hat, accosting the passenger with, "Mr. Honeythunder?"
"That is my name, sir."
"My name is Crisparkle,"